All right, so last class what we did is we spent half an hour and we said, all right, now that we have a thesis statement, we've got to have reasons, right? What are reasons? Take your thesis statement and then add the word because. So, for instance, if your thesis statement is that inmates develop incredibly close friendships and bonds, that's your thesis. That's what you're going to argue. Why? One, because they spend a great deal of time with each other. Right? They got nowhere else to go. Two, because they're in high-pressure situations where they have to find people to rely on and trust to be able to survive the prison experience. And the third reason is because they're vulnerable. They're sitting there that whole time, incarcerated, only to deal with either guilt about what they've done or angst or denial. You're going to find other people that feel the same way. So we've spent some time developing a thesis. Now what we want to do is we actually want to develop that key point, that because, in more detail, so that we've got an argument to base our visual essay around. Then we can find images that we've collected so far and how they support that idea. So we're going to develop one today, just again as a class, as a reminder. And we're going to hope you spend the rest of this class doing that. So Nathan, can you start by telling me what your thesis is, please?
Moral obligations are part of us because we feel moral obligations are a part of us, and we all feel them repulsed.
We all have them. Okay. All right, so that's the argument, right? We all feel moral obligations to people in our lives, right? All right, this is our thesis. Okay, just a quick show of hands. How many of you agree with that? How many agree with the fact that we feel morally obligated to certain people in our life? That's pretty universal, right? And so we should be able to actually then argue that. So, why? So let's go back to that because. So what's that first key point? It's the first because. Nathan, why?
We want to do what we think is right.
Yeah. Can anyone come up with an example of a situation where they feel morally obligated to a relative or to a family member, and the reason they do that is because they think it's the right thing to do? Everyone's nodding their head. You can't see that in the recording, but if I turned around and put the webcam on, you see a whole room of students that are engaged and just raring to go, who are shaking their heads in agreement. Okay, so folks, that's step one. That's our first key. Our step one for the writing, our topic sentence, is just that. It's our first key point. Okay? We want to do what we think is right in life because we feel morally obligated to the people in our lives. Does it seem to make sense? I mean, we're not doing anything new there. All we're doing is we're taking the first key point and we're incorporating the thesis into that sentence. Okay, now this is where I'm going to pause the recording for a second and then ask you to basically do that same thing, is to take the first key point and just use that as your topic sentence, linking back the thesis into it. So Nathan's thesis was we all feel moral obligations to the people in our lives. The reason for that, his first key point, is we want to do what we think is right. So his topic sentence is we want to do what we think is right because we feel morally obligated to the people in our lives. So I'll give you 5 minutes to try to do the exact same thing. Just come up with that one topic sentence. Okay, we're back now, and the majority of the class has created their topic sentence, although you won't know because there's no noticeable pause in the recording. So step 2 now. You've got that topic sentence that includes your first key point and your thesis. Now you have to actually explain why you believe that key point to be true. I mean, in an essay, in a thesis, you are arguing for your point, right? And arguing for your point is important. That's what determines how effective it is. So you might get these ideas based on some of the readings you've done, some of the research you've done, some of the discussions you've done with other people. And so I look at that first statement, we do what we think is right because we feel morally obligated to people. And it immediately makes me think of, that I still have that bolded, what is right and wrong? I mean, it's subjective, right? We all have different definitions. I can't spell. This is embarrassing. My mild dyslexia has bitten me in the butt when it comes to recording. We all have different definitions of what is right and wrong. I don't know if you would agree with that. I mean, I think it's wrong, to lie to your partner. Other people might think it's absolutely necessary to survive a relationship with your partner, right? It's a question of your own values and your own morals. And that goes back to Nathan's point. It's about our moral obligations. So I started thinking, why do we have things that are different? And it makes me realize that we actually adjust what we consider to be right and wrong to the individuals we're dealing with. Now, I don't know if this makes sense to you, but I think about when I feel morally obligated to my family and I try to do what's right by, say, my parents, I'm not thinking about my own morals. I'm thinking about their morals. Because whether I do something right or wrong, I'm actually thinking about what they consider right and wrong. So, when I try to do, when I try to do the right thing, in a particular situation, I base my decision on what the people who are affected by that decision consider right and wrong. I don't know if that makes sense, but think about the choices you make. Are you worried about how they'll perceive it, or are you worried about if you feel good about it? Yeah, it makes me think that the reason we feel more obligations to people is we want to satisfy what they consider right and wrong, not what we do. Because it's not always the same. Everyone sees right and wrong differently. Now, I don't have any evidence yet to back this up. This is just my opinion based on having a thought about it. And my next step is where I've got to find some information that's going to support this. And be assured, if you think it, somebody else probably already thinks that same opinion. And chances are someone's written a blog about it, or someone's written an article about it, or someone's done some research on it. So if you have a truly original idea, I almost guarantee you there'll be something out there that supports it. And that'll be the next step, going back to that research and finding some outside research to support it. But as of now, I've got almost half my paragraph because all I've done is restated the key point and then explained it in my own kind of terms. And that's what I'll ask you to do now for the next kind of 10 minutes, is start to just look at that topic sentence and ask yourself, why do you actually believe that to be true? And then try to put together a couple of words, hopefully with less spelling mistakes and errors that I did when I was doing it, and see where you get to. Right, so we're back with step 3 here, and we're just kind of rehashing what we just talked about in class. We've got a topic sentence. We've explained our topic sentence. Now it's important we've got some kind of research, not just based on the film or the book we're doing, but some kind of research out there that's going to actually back up what we've just said. There's no point putting in any research if it doesn't 100% back up what you've just said. And I've said here that basically that we only do what we feel the other person thinks is right or wrong. So our moral obligations aren't about fulfilling our own expectations, but it's about fulfilling somebody else's expectations. So I got to find something that fits that. And yes, I'm going to resort to Google because that's where we all go to from the very, very beginning. I'm talking about obligations. And those obligations that I've just talked about are based on fulfilling another person's expectations. So as painful as this is, sometimes you simply have to click on different links and have a quick skim and see if there's anything that works. So first one up, whose expectations are we fulfilling? It's a pretty odd little graphic of an eye. But here we go. Look at this. It almost fits right in. When we are children, we are taught that if we touch fire, we burn. So growing up, we learn not to play, not to touch things. And I could read the entire article to you, but you're probably not going to sit there and watch through this video if I read the entire article. But I can skim it, and I can find something here that might work. Here we go. This is perfect, and this wasn't, I didn't even plan this. This is just lovely. When we feel the need to fulfill someone else's obligation, our life is under obligation. So even though I came up with that idea all on my own, thinking, okay, well, I got to start somewhere, somebody else in the world believes it, and they've written an article about it, which is awesome for me, because now I'm going to copy that. I'm going to find the right document this time. I'm going to write step 3, supporting evidence. I'm going to paste that and make sure that I've actually listed where I've gotten it from, because I need to actually embed that citation. So if I go back up, this is whose expectations are we fulfilling by HuffPost. Now, if I keep doing this, if I keep going and finding a couple of different sources, I can start developing that supporting evidence. I can actually start off my paragraph now, or my sentence, with, according to online research, the HuffPost, which actually is a reputable news agency, the HuffPost's article entitled, Whose Obligations Am I Fulfilling? States, when we feel the need to fulfill someone else's expectations, our life is under obligation. And you know what? Once we get to talking about the actual text, specifically death at a funeral here, we'll see how exactly true that actual statement is. Right? So this is what we're trying to do now. We're trying to find research that we can incorporate into sentences by saying where we've got it to and how that research supports our point. Now I'm going to stop the recording now because we're almost at the end of time in class, but we'll continue this next class and then post an entirety video on its own, hopefully before the end of Thursday.